Howdy, howdy, my fellow gamers, and welcome back to another episode of Storytime with Freak as we continue to delve further through Thunderhead by Neal Shusterman. Today, we are reading Chapter 18, Finding Purity. Without further ado, let's dive right on in. There is a fine line between freedom and permission. The former is necessary, the latter is dangerous. Perhaps the most dangerous thing that the species that created me has ever faced. I have pondered the records of the mortal age and long ago determined the two sides of this coin. While freedom gives rise to growth and enlightenment, permission allows evil to flourish in a light of day that would otherwise destroy it. A self-important dictator gives permission for his subjects to blame the world's ills on those least able to defend themselves. A haughty queen gives permission to slaughter in the name of God. An arrogant head of state gives permission to all nature of hate as long as it feeds his ambition, and the unfortunate truth is, people devour it. Society gorges itself and rots. Permission is the bloated corpse of freedom. For this reason, where permission from me is required for some action, I run countless simulations until I can thoroughly weigh all the possible consequences. Take, for instance, the permission I gave for unsavories to have awful clubs. It was not a decision I made lightly. Only after careful deliberation did I say that the clubs were not only worthwhile, but necessary. Awful clubs allow the unsavories to enjoy their chosen lifestyle without negative public effect. It affords them the pretense of violence without the cascade of consequences. The irony is that unsavories purport to hate me, even though they know I am giving them the very things they want. I don't feel any ill toward them any more than a parent would feel ill toward the tantrum of an overtired child. Besides, eventually even the most defiant of unsavories will settle. I have noticed a trend that by the time most of them turn a few corners, they relax into a kinder, gentler sort of defiance. Bit by bit, they become to appreciate inner peace, which is as it should be. In time, all storms settle to a pleasant breeze. The Thunderhead. Chapter 18, Finding Purity. While Grayson Tolliver was honest to a fault, Slade had quickly become a consummate liar. It began with his history. He made up the unpleasant family life that didn't exist, defining moments that never happened, anecdotes that made people laugh and either hate him or admire him. Slade's parents were physics professors and expected their son to follow in an academic career. Because with parents like that, he was clearly a genius, but instead he chose to rebel and go rogue. He had once gone over Niagara Falls in an inner tube because it was much more intense thrill than splatting. It had taken them 3 days to recover his body and revive him. His social exploits in high school were legendary. He had seduced both the homecoming queen and the homecoming king in high school, but just so he could break them up because they were the most arrogant and narcissistic couple in school. Fascinating, Traxler told him at their next meeting with genuine admiration. You never impressed me as having this much imagination. And while Grayson Tolliver might have been offended, Slade took it as a compliment. With Slade being such a remarkably interesting human being, he thought he might want to keep the name even after his undercover operation was done. Thanks to Traxler, all of his stories became part of his official record. Now, if anyone tried to verify the veracity of the lies he told, it would all be there for all to see, and no amount of digging could debunk them. And the stories got taller. When my mother got gleaned, I decided to go completely unsavory, he told the people. But the Thunderhead wouldn't give me the U. It kept sending me to counseling and tweaking my nanites. It thought it knew me better than I did, and kept telling me I really didn't want to be unsavory at all. I was just confused. In the end, I had to do something big to make my point. So I stole an off-grid car and used it to ram a bus off a bridge. It left 29 people deadish. Sure, I'll be paying off their revivals for years, but it was worth it, because I got what I wanted. Now I get to stay unsavory until all those revivals are paid off. It was a compelling fiction that always left his audience impressed, and no one could refute it, because Agent Traxler was quick to make it an official part of his digital life story. Traxler went so far as to create a whole history for the bus plunge and its non-existent victims. He even gave Slade a last name that was suitably ironic. He was now Slade Bridger. In a world where nobody, not even unsavories, made people deadish on purpose, his story was rapidly becoming local legend. His days were spent hanging out in various unsavory gathering spots, spreading his stories and putting out feelers for work, telling people he needed a job, and not a mainstream kind of job, but one where he could get his hands dirty. Out in the world at large, he'd started to get used to suspicious looks from passerby. The way shopkeepers would eye him as if he were about there to steal. The way some people would cross the street rather than share the sidewalk with him. He found it odd that the world was free of prejudice and bias, except in the case of unsavories, who, for the most part, wanted the rest of humanity to be their collective enemy. Malt wasn't the only awful club in town. There were lots of them, each featuring a different iconic time period. Twist was modeled after Dickensian Britannia, Benedict's had a colonial American style, and Morgue was full of Euro-Scandinavian Viking indulgences. Grayson went to the various clubs and became well-versed in creating just enough of a scene to make himself known and to garner respect from the unsavory crowd. The most troubling thing was that Grayson was beginning to like it. Never before had he had blanket permission to do something wrong, but now wrong was what his life had become about. It kept him awake at night. He longed to talk to the Thunderhead about it, but knew it wouldn't give him a response. He did know, however, that it was watching him. Its cameras were there in all the clubs. The Thunderhead's communal, unblinking presence had always been a comfort to him. Even in his loneliest moments, he knew he was never truly alone. But now its silence, present, was unnerving. Was the Thunderhead ashamed of him? He would invent conversation in his mind to quell such fears. Explore this new facet of yourself with my blessing, he would imagine the Thunderhead telling him. It's fine as long as you remember who you truly are and don't lose yourself. But what if this is who I truly am, he would ask. Not even the imaginary Thunderhead had an answer to that question. There's an ellipses, so we're switching characters. Her name was Purity Viveros, and she was an unsavory, as they came. It was clear to Grayson that the big red U on her ID was by design and not due to an unfortunate accident of circumstance. She was exotic. Her hair was drained of pigment. Beyond being merely white, the strands were clear, and her scalp had phosphorescent injections in multiple colors, which made the ends of each strand of hair glow with radiance like fiber optic filaments. Grayson instinctively knew that she was dangerous. He also thought she was beautiful, and he was drawn to her. He wondered if he would have been drawn to her in his old life, but after a few weeks of being immersed in an unsavory lifestyle, he suspected his criteria for attraction had changed. He met her at an awful club, one across town that he hadn't been to before. It was called Lockup, and it was designed to resemble a mortal-age facility of incarceration. Upon arrival, each guest was manhandled by guards, dragged through a series of doors, and thrown into a cell with a random cellmate, with no regard to gender. The idea of incarceration was so foreign and absurd to Grayson that when the cell door was slammed shut with a nasty clank that reverberated in the concrete cell block, he actually laughed. This type of treatment could never have been real. Surely this was just an exaggeration. "Finally!" said a voice in the upper of the two bunks in the small cell. "I thought they'd never bring me a cellmate." She introduced herself and explained that Purity was not a nickname, but her actual given name. If my parents didn't want me to embrace the obvious irony, they should have named me something else, she told Grayson. If they had named me Profanity, I might have turned out to be a good little girl. She was slight of build, but by no means a little girl. Currently she was 22, although Grayson suspected she had been around the corner once or twice. Grayson would find soon enough that she was strong and limber, and very street-savvy. Grayson looked around the cell. It seemed pretty simple and straightforward. He tested the cell door once, then again. It rattled, but didn't budge. "First time in lockup?" Purity asked, and since it was pretty obvious, Grayson didn't lie about it. "Yeah. So what are we supposed to do now?" "Well, we could spend some time getting to know each other," she said with a mischievous grin. "Or we could yell for a guard and demand a last meal. They have to bring us whatever we ask for." "Really?" "Yeah, they pretend like they won't do it, but they have to. It's their job after all. The place is a dinner club." Then Grayson guessed the real gimmick of the place. "We're supposed to break out. Is that it?" Purity gave him some lictenious grin. "You're a quick one, ain't ya?" He wasn't sure she meant it or was being facetious. Either way, he kind of liked it. "There's always a way out, but it's up to us to figure it out," she told him. "Sometimes it's a secret passage, other times there's a file hidden in the food, sometimes there aren't any tricks or tools but our own smarts. If all else fails, the guards are pretty easy to outsmart. It's their job to be slow and stupid." Grayson heard shouts and running feet echoing from somewhere else in the cell block. Another pair of guests had just broken out. "So what'll it be?" Purity asked. "Dinner escape or quality time with your cellmate?" And before he could answer, she planted a kiss on him, the likes of which he had never before experienced. When it was done, he didn't know what to say except, "My name is Slade." To which she responded, "I don't care," and kissed him again. While Purity seemed more than ready to take this as far as it could go, the passing guards and escaping inmates, who leered at them and made hooting noises as they went by, made it far too awkward for Grayson. He pulled away. "Let's break out," he said, "and, find a better place to get to know each other." She turned it off as quickly as she turned it on. "Fine, but don't assume I'll still be interested later." And she called a guard over, insisting they eat first and ordered them some prime rib. "We don't got any," the guard told them. "Bring it anyway," she demanded. The guard grunted, went off, and came back 5 minutes later with a rolling table and a platter with enough prime rib to choke a horse, as well as a ton of side dishes and a wine in a white plastic bottle with a screw cap. "I wouldn't drink the wine," the guard warned them. "It's been making the other inmates real sick." "Sick?" said Grayson. "What do you mean, sick?" Purity kicked him under the table hard enough to activate his pain nanites. That shut him up. "Thanks," said Purity. "Now get the hell out." The guard snarled and left, locking them in again. Purity then turned to Grayson. "You really must be dense," she said. "That thing about the wine was our hint." And upon closer inspection, the bottle had actually had a biohazard sign for patrons who were even denser than he was, he supposed. Purity unscrewed the cap, and immediately a caustic stench that made Grayson's eyes water filled the air. "What did I tell you?" said Purity. She recapped it and left it for the end of the meal. "We'll figure out what to do with it after we eat. I don't know about you, but I'm starved." As they ate, she talked with her mouth full, wiped her lips on her sleeve, and doused everything in ketchup. She was like the date from hell that his parents would have warned him against if they had cared enough, and he loved it. She was the antithesis of his old life. "So what would you do?" she asked. "I mean, when you're not clubbing. Are you gainfully employed, or do you just sponge off the Thunderhead like half the losers who call themselves unsavory?" "Right now, I'm on the basic income guarantee," he told her. "That's fine because I'm new in town. I'm still looking for work." "And your Nimbo hasn't been able to find you anything?" "My what?" "Your probational Nimbus officer, dummy. The Nimbos promise everyone a job who wants one, so how come you're still looking?" "My Nimbo is a useless bastard," Grayson told her, because he figured it would be something Slade would say. "I hate him. Why am I not surprised? And anyway, I don't want the kind of job the AI want to give me. I want a job that suits me. And what might suit you?" Now it's his turn to give a licentious grin. The kind that gets my blood pumping, the kind that my Nimbo won't even offer me. The boy with the puppy dog eyes is looking for trouble, Purity teased. Wonder what he'll do when he finds it. She licked her lips, then wiped them off on her sleeve. The wine turned out to be some sort of acid. "Fluoroflavaric is my guess," said Purity. "Explains the plastic bottle. It's probably Teflon because the stuff eats through anything else." They poured it around the base of several of the cell bars. It started to weed away at the iron, releasing noxious fumes that taxed the healing nanites in their lungs. In less than 5 minutes, they were able to kick out the bars and escape. The cell block was a study in mayhem. Now that a good number of the evening's inmates had finished their meals and escaped, they were tearing the place up. Guards were chasing them, and they were chasing guards. There were food fights and fist fights, and whenever someone fought with the guards always lost, no matter how brawny they looked and how well they were armed. Half of the guards ended up locked in cells themselves to be taunted by the unsavories. The remaining staff threatened to call in something called the National Guard to put the riot down. It was all great fun. Grayson and Purity eventually made it all the way to the warden's office. They kicked out the warden. The instant the cell door was locked, Purity got out what she had begun in the cell. "Private enough for you?" she asked, but didn't wait for a response. 5 minutes later, when she had Grayson at his most vulnerable, she turned the tables on him. "I'll tell you a secret," she said, whispering into his ear. "It's no accident that you ended up in my cell, Slade. I arranged it." Then a knife that seemed to come from nowhere appeared in her hand. He immediately began to struggle, but it was no use. He was on his back, unable to move. She had him pinned. She pressed the tip of the blade to his bare chest, just enough to his sternum. An upward jab would go right through his heart. "Don't move, or I might slip." He had no choice. He was completely at her mercy. If he had truly been unsavory, he would have seen this coming, but he was too trusting. "What do you want?" "It's not what I want, it's what you want," she said. "I know you've been asking around for work, real work, heart-pounding work, as you call it. So my friends brought you to my attention." She looked him in the eyes like she was trying to read something, then tightened the grip on the knife. "If you kill me, I'll just be revived," he reminded her, "and you'll get your hand slapped by the API. She put pressure on the knife, who gasped. He thought she'd push it all the way in up to the hilt, but instead she barely broke his skin. "Who said I wanted to kill you?" Then she took the knife away, touched a finger to the tiny wound on his chest, and brought the finger to her mouth. "I just wanted to make sure you weren't a bot," she said. "The Thunderhead uses them to spy on us. Did you know that? It's how the Thunderhead can see in places that don't got cameras. The bots look more and more real all the time, but their blood still tastes like motor oil. So what does mine taste like?" Grayson dared to ask. She leaned close to him. "Life," she whispered into his ear. For the rest of the evening until the tub closed, Grayson Oliver, a.k.a. Slade Bridger, experienced a dizzy variety of the things that life had to offer. So concludes Chapter 18. Thank you all for watching. Feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe down below. Feel free to check out the Twitch links. Join the Discord. Let me know where you came from, what other books you'd be interested in me reading. Have a fantastic evening as always. Stay freaky.